Morena Tato, welcome to today's story time. Great to see you all again. It was really cool. I was sent a picture today of some really cute ducklings that were hanging around school. Obviously, there's no kids around, so they're enjoying taking over the school playground, which I thought was really cool. All right, today we're going to be reading the story Lazy Daisy and then continuing on with James and the Giant Peach. So let's have a look. Lazy Daisy. Jasper Horatio Wiggleby Clark loved walking each day in Centenary Park. He talked to the dogs and knew each one by name and remembered their favorite biscuit and game. But walking's more fun with a friend than alone, and Jasper had dreams of a dog of his own. One night he woke up to a curious sound. Something was growling and scratching around. He followed the noises, bang, rustle, thump, and found a peculiar doggy-like lump. Hooray! Jasper cried. All my dreams have come true. It's my very own puppy dog. Yippity-doo! I'm calling you Daisy, he patted her head and heaved the large bundle up onto his bed. Tomorrow we'll visit my favorite spot. Right now it is bedtime. But sleep she did not. And if you look carefully, I don't actually think it's a puppy. At daybreak, old Jasper put on his best hat and drove to the park, but Daisy just sat. She might have been cold, so he made her a coat with sequins and feathers and fur around the throat. But Daisy did not feel like walking one bit. She dug in her claws. She wanted to sit. The following morning was sunny and hot, and Daisy just sat in the very same spot. So Jasper bought glasses to shield Daisy's eyes and sparkly bikinis in just the right size. But Daisy did not feel like walking one bit. She dug in her claws. She wanted to sit. Probably by now you've recognized that she's a koala bear, and you think about where koala bears like to hang out. Jasper was desperate. What could his dog need? He knelt on the ground. He started to plead, Daisy, please walk. But she just didn't care. She rolled on her back with her legs in the air. Then with barely a sound, not even a peep, she climbed up a gum tree and fell fast asleep. No one told Jasper, and he couldn't see it was a koala up there in the tree. Poor Jasper went home and he tossed in his bed until an idea popped into his head. He climbed to the attic and opened a trunk and started assembling a whole lot of junk. He nailed and he hammered and built a machine that would have been fit for the fussiest queen. He strapped Daisy in and he cheered when he saw her large fairy bottom lift up off the floor. So Jasper is pleased his contraption's a hit. Now he can go walking and Daisy can sit. Very clever, Jasper. Awesome. Right, we carry on with James and the Giant Peach. You have a look, we haven't got that too much far to go till the end of the story. So chapter 28, they just escaped the cloud men after the centipede had been yelling at them and not being very kind at all. So we carry on. One by one, the travelers came out again to the top of the peach and gazed carefully around. The moon was still shining as brightly as ever, and there was still plenty of huge shimmering cloud mountains on all sides, but there were no cloudmen in sight now. The peach is leaking, shouted the old green grasshopper, peering over the side. It's full of holes and the juice is dripping out everywhere. That does it, cried the earthworm. If the peach is leaking, then we'll surely sink. Don't be silly, the centipede told him. We're not in the water now. Oh, look, shouted the ladybird. Look, 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 over there. Everyone swung around to look. In the distance, and directly ahead of them, they saw a most extraordinary sight. It was a kind of arch, a colossal curvy shaped thing that reached high up into the sky and came down again at both ends. The ends were resting upon a huge flat cloud that was as big as a desert. Now, what in the world is that? Asked James. It's a bridge. It's an enormous hoop cut in half. It's a giant horseshoe standing upside down. Stop me if I'm wrong, murmured the centipede, going white in the face. But might those not be cloudmen climbing all over it? There was a dreadful silence. The peach floated closer and closer. They are cloudmen. There are hundreds of them, thousands, millions. Oh, I don't want to hear about it, shrieked the blind earthworm. I'd rather be up on the end of a fish hook and use his bait than come up against those terrible creatures again. I'd rather be fried alive and eaten by a Mexican, wailed the old green grasshopper. Please keep quiet, whispered James. It's our only hope. They crouched very still on top of the peach, staring at the cloudmen. The whole surface of the cloud was literally swarming with them, and there were hundreds more above climbing about on that monstrous, crazy arch. I don't care what they're doing to it, the centipede said, scuttling over to the entrance. I'm not staying up here. Goodbye. Do you know what? James whispered. What? That enormous arch. They seem to be painting it. They've got pots of paint and big brushes. You look. And he was quite right. The travellers were close enough now to see that this was exactly what the cloudmen were doing. They all had huge brushes in their hands, and they were splashing the paint onto the great curvy arch in a frenzy of speed, so fast, in fact, that in a few minutes the whole of the arch became covered with the most glorious colours, reds, blues, greens, yellows, purples. You can probably imagine what they're painting. It's a rainbow, everyone said at once. They're making a rainbow. Oh, isn't it beautiful? Just look at the colours. Centipede, they shouted. You must come up and see this. They were so enthralled by the beauty and brilliance of the rainbow that they forgot to keep their heads low any longer. The centipede poked his head cautiously out of the tunnel entrance. Well, he said. I've always wondered how those things were made. Why all the ropes? What are they doing with those ropes? Good heavens, they're pushing it off the cloud, cried James. There it goes. They're lowering it down to the earth with ropes. And I'll tell you something else, the centipede said sharply. If I'm not greatly mistaken, we ourselves are going to bump right into it. Bless my soul, he's right, the old green grasshopper exclaimed. The rainbow was now dangling in the air below the cloud. The peach was also just below the level of the cloud, and it was heading directly towards the rainbow, travelling rather fast. We're lost, Miss Spider cried, wringing her feet again. The end has come. I can't stand it, wailed the earthworm. Tell me what's happening. We're going to miss it, shouted the ladybird. No, we're not. Yes, we are. Yes. Oh, my heavens. Hold on, everybody. James called out, and suddenly there was a tremendous thud as the peach went crashing into the top of the rainbow. This was followed by an awful splintering noise as the enormous rainbow snapped right across the middle and became two separate pieces. The next thing that happened was extremely unfortunate. The ropes that the cloudmen had been using for lowering the rainbow got tangled up with the silk strings that went up from the peach to the seagulls. The peach was trapped. Panic and pandemonium broke out among the travellers, and James Henry Trotter glanced up quickly and saw the faces of 1,000 furious cloudmen peering down at him over the edge of the cloud. The faces had almost no shape at all because of all the long white hairs that covered them. There were no noses, no mouths, no ears, no chins. Only the eyes were visible in each face. Two small black eyes glinted malevolently through the hairs. Then came the most frightening thing of all. One cloudman, a huge hairy creature who must have been 14 feet tall at least, suddenly stood up and made a tremendous leap off the side of the cloud, trying to get to one of the silk strings above the peach. James and his friends saw him go flying through the air above them, his arms outstretched in front of him, reaching for the nearest string, and they saw him grab it, cling to it with his hands and legs, and then very, very slowly, hand over hand, he began to come down the string. Mercy, help, save us, cried the ladybird. He's coming down to eat us, wailed the old green grasshopper. Jump overboard. Then eat the earthworm first, shouted the centipede. It's no good eating me. I'm full of bones like a kipper. Centipede, yelled James. Quickly, bite through that string, the one that's coming on. He's coming down on. The centipede rushed over to the stem of the peach and took the silk string in his teeth and bit through it with one snap of his jaws. Immediately, far above him, a single seagull was seen to come away from the rest of the flock and go flying off, with a long string trailing from its neck. And clinging desperately to the end of the string, shouting and cursing with fury, was the huge, hairy cloudman. Up and up he went, swinging across the moonlit sky, and James Henry Trotter, watching him with delight, said, "My goodness, he must weigh almost nothing at all if one seagull is able to pull him up like that. He must be all hair and air." The rest of the cloudmen were so flabbergasted at seeing one of their company carried away in this manner that they let go of the ropes they were holding, and then, of course, down went the rainbow, both halves of it together, tumbling towards the earth below. This freed the peach, which at once began sailing away from that terrible cloud. But the travellers were not in the clear yet. The infuriated cloudmen jumped up and ran after them along the cloud, pelting them mercilessly with all sorts of hard and horrible objects. Empty paint buckets, paintbrushes, step ladders, stools, saucepans, frying pans, rotten eggs, dead rats, bottles of hair oil, anything those brutes could lay their hands on, came raining down upon the peach. One cloudman, taking very careful aim, tipped a gallon of thick purple paint over the edge of the cloud, right onto the centipede himself. The centipede screamed in anger. "My legs!" he cried. "They're all sticking together. I can't walk. And my eyelids won't open. I can't see. And my boots are ruined." But for the moment, everyone was far too busy dodging the things the cloudmen were throwing to pay attention to the centipede. "The paint is drying," he moaned. "It's going hard. I can't move my legs. I can't move anything." "You can still move your mouth," the earthworm said, "and that's a great pity." "James," bawled the centipede, "please help me. Wash off this paint. Scrape it up. Anything." Chapter 29. It seemed like a long time before the seagulls were able to pull the peach away from the horrible rainbow cloud, but they managed it at last. And then everybody gathered around the wretched centipede and began arguing about the best way to get the paint off his body. He really did look a sight. He was purple all over, and now that the paint was beginning to dry and harden, he was forced to sit very stiff and upright, as though he were encased in cement, and all 42 of his legs were sticking out straight in front of him like rods. He tried to say something, but his lips couldn't move. All he could do was make gurgling noises in his throat. The old green grasshopper reached out and touched him carefully on the stomach. "But how could it possibly have dried so quickly?" he asked. "It's rainbow paint," James answered. "Rainbow paint dries very quick and very hard." "I detest paint," Miss Spider announced. "It frightens me. It reminds me of Aunt Spiker. The late Aunt Spiker, I mean, because the last time she painted a ceiling, my poor darling grandmother stepped into it by mistake when it was still wet, and there she stuck. And all through the night we could hear her yell calling to us, saying, 'Help, help, help!' It was heartbreaking to listen to her. But what could we do? Not a thing until the next day when the paint had dried, and then, of course, we all rushed over to her and calmed her down and gave her some food. Believe it or not, she lived for 6 months like that, upside down on the ceiling with her paint stuck permanently in the paint. She really did. We fed her every day. We brought her fresh flies straight from the web. But then on the 26th of April last, Aunt Sponge, the late Aunt Sponge, I mean, happened to glance up at the ceiling and spotted her. 'A spider!' she cried. 'A disgusting spider! Quick! Fetch up the mop with a long handle!' And then it was so awful. I can't bear to think of it." Miss Spider wiped away a tear and looked sadly at the centipede. "You poor thing," she murmured. "I do feel sorry for you." "It'll never come off," the earthworm said brightly. "Our centipede will never move again. He'll turn into a statue, and we shall be able to put him in the middle of a lawn with a bird bath on top of his head." "We could try peeling him like a banana," the old green grasshopper suggested. "Or rubbing him with sandpaper," the ladybird said. "Now, if he stuck out his tongue," the earthworm said, smiling a little for perhaps the first time in his life, "if he stuck it out really far, then we'd all catch hold of it and start pulling. And if we pulled hard enough, we could turn him inside out, and he would have a new skin." There was a pause while the others considered this interesting proposal. "I think," James said slowly, "I think that the best thing to do—" Then he stopped. "What was that?" he asked quickly. "I heard a voice. I heard someone shouting." I wonder who that is shouting. We'll continue on next week with chapter 30. well, not next week, tomorrow with chapter 13. Hey, I hope you have a good day today. Have fun doing your learning, and we'll catch up with you tomorrow for our next story time. All right, ka kite anō.